Hello, everyone. I am the Wi-Fi Challenge Timothy Gager, and welcome to Virtual Fridays Dire Literary Series. I am in Williamstown, Massachusetts right now, but
he's
more
Rosen.
importantly, my guest tonight is Robinson from the Epiphanies Project, editor and a writer in her own right. So let us find a little bit about Beth right now. And yeah, things are just smooth as thing. Oh, here it is. Okay. So there's Beth's website, and there's the wonderful book. And you can go to BRS Scribe, BethRobinsonScribe.com, and find out about Beth, which I like to send people to. But Beth can offer you a lot of information, a lot of work. She will work for you. You can read her articles. There's writing services, and so happy to show you things about book project. But first of all, and more importantly, Beth as a writer, would like to have a read for 7 to 10 minutes. Everyone, Beth Robinson.
Hi. Well, thank you. Thanks, Tim. Glad to be here. I am reading B is for Backwards from our book, The Epiphanies Project. This is my piece in the book. It's also the second chapter of my memoir. So here we go. It was a lovely June day. It was continually surprising that it was summer after 4 days spent mostly in the hospital. Mom's room looked out onto an interior courtyard. Sun filtered down from the skylight several stories up, but the room still felt like it was in a windowless basement. For most of those days, we sat on the sofa and in the armchair in that room, watching the ventilator breathe for her, watching nurses come in and out and fuss with tubes and monitors and bags. It seemed futile to me. The morning after they brought her in, I called the doctor. I know you can't tell me what's going to happen, I said, but if it were your mother and your brother was in Los Angeles, would you call him and tell him to get on a plane? The short answer, he said, is yes. There was a long answer too, but I knew what was happening. I had known for months. It was weird to be in her house. Everything felt weird. She wasn't there. The house didn't feel like the place where we had gathered for holidays with her grandchildren running up and down the basement stairs, the busyness of the kitchen, the smell of brisket. And we weren't there to visit or to celebrate. We were there to pass the time until her funeral. And I was there to find a necklace I had made her. It was silver with a large chunk of sparkly white druzy in the middle, a rutilated quartz teardrop hanging from it, and a garnet, which was her birthstone, set on top. She told me how much people admired it when she wore it in Boca. I knew she loved telling them her daughter made it for her. I knew she loved telling me people admired it. It was a really nice piece, but it was more than that. Right then, it felt like the only palpable proof of our connection to each other, and I badly wanted to wear it to her funeral. My sister-in-law, Tina, had flown in from LA by then. Together, we went up into my mother's closet and started looking through her jewelry. I set aside some pieces I wanted, mostly pieces I had made or bought for her for Mother's Day, Hanukkah, her birthday. There was always a wall between us, so we expressed our love by throwing jewelry and other accessories over it. The story of our relationship could be told in clothes and handbags and necklaces and pins and bracelets and rings. My mother loved clothes that were elegant and clean and neat, and most importantly, that came in pre-assembled in well-thought-out outfits. I loved expressing myself, mixing and matching it, what my father used to call costumes. But he once came to breakfast wearing plaid pants and a striped shirt, and when I pointed it out, he looked down, shrugged indifferently, and went off to work. It was one of the worst moments of a sartorial career that ranged from unimaginative to memorably awful. So I didn't really care what he said about my costumes. My mother, however, had a way of looking me up and down without looking me in the face that was both irritating and crushing. I wasn't matched enough. I wasn't polished enough. I wasn't her enough. I wasn't enough. What? I would ask. Oh, nothing. My mother picked out my clothes for me until my senior year of high school when I traded in kilts, crew necks, and penny loafers for a pair of khaki overalls I wore every chance I could. Then I went to art school. It was right after Flashdance came out, and I wore sweat clothes I cut up and embellished with paint and beads. After I washed out in both art school and the theater department, submarined by undiagnosed seasonal depression, I came home and resumed dressing like a regular citizen. married a suitable Jewish husband, and proceeded to have 2 children and start drinking heavily in crop slacks and floral twin sets. After my divorce, I returned to my costumes, and one day, while shopping with my mother, an exercise I loathed for reasons having entirely to do with guilt, anger, and a frustrating struggle with my own identity, she held up a pair of Western boot-style mules. "How about these?" she asked hopefully. They had stitched seams, a snipped toe, and a stacked wooden heel. I couldn't have picked better. It was the first time she had picked something out for me, and I had looked at it and seen my own style. "Yeah, I like them," I said, surprised. I let her buy them for me, and I let myself enjoy wearing them. I was thinking about that and thinking about the love language of jewelry while I went through her things. I was angry at her for starving herself to death. I had talked to her doctors. I knew she wasn't doing what she needed to do to stay alive, to keep up her strength so they could treat the lung disease that was killing her. She was steadily losing a pound a week, and I was constantly pushing her to get a feeding tube. When she finally agreed to it, I was angry about her timing. I had just started a new job and didn't have the time or energy to be a perfect daughter. She was dying, and it was partly because she hadn't done what her doctors told her to do. She was doing it at a time that was really inconvenient for me, and I felt both angry and terribly guilty. I was there at the end, continually, but I still felt horrible about my stinginess, resentment. What had been eating at me for days was wondering if, when she died, she knew I loved her. Grief and guilt and anger all chased each other around in my gut as I opened her neatly organized jewelry drawers. What was I doing going through her things? The strangeness of us in her house without her, the odd, unbalanced noise of us surrounding the empty, silent spot of her, felt numb and raw at the same time. My skin hurt with grief. I found a necklace I had hurriedly assembled as a birthday gift, an asymmetrical heart I had cut out of silver and strung on purple and green beads. It looked like something she would have bought herself at an art fair. I found pieces I had bought at art fairs, at my favorite galleries in Ann Arbor, pieces we'd designed together at my friend Nomi's bead store. I found the language in which I had said, "I love you," to my mother over and over throughout the years. That's why she loved that Druzy piece so much. I get it. My room is filled with everything my children have ever given me. They are my ultimate treasures, and that necklace was hers. Tina and I pulled out travel bags full of jewelry looking for it. We looked through drawers. Mom's boyfriend Gary was sitting in the kitchen reading. I asked him if he'd seen it, and he said that it might still be in Florida and that he would look around their condo when he got back if we didn't find it. I found her wedding ring and her engagement ring. I thought Emma and Ruby might like to wear something of hers to the funeral too. In the complicated mess of all of our mother-daughter-sister relationships, her relationship with my girls had been so wonderfully simple. She adored them and they adored her. I found the Pinecone section pendant we ordered after she admired one Emma bought at a music festival. I set it aside for Emma to wear. I found some delicate chains with tiny pendants that I thought Ruby might like, including the gold bee she often wore. Different pieces reminded me of different occasions, and I wept. I wept because my mother was gone and because I didn't know if I had been a good daughter. I wept because it was too late to say, "I'm sorry," or "I love you," or to get on a plane and fly to Florida and make her take care of herself. She had told each of us that there were some specific pieces she wanted to go to her granddaughters and daughters-in-law, and we were sure she had made a list. We scoured her office but didn't find it. So each time Tina admired something or said that she remembered giving it to my mother, I said, "Take it." It felt right. I knew she wanted everyone to have something. We just didn't know what. Tina chose a set of gold stacking rings and a wide silver ring set with a large faceted citron. I really liked that ring, but my mother's fingers, even when she was healthy, were more slender than mine. She was, by nature, a more elegant creature than I am. I sat at her makeup table with some of the travel bags, which I had checked over and over, close to giving up. I found lots of other pieces I could wear. I could wear the large copper and crystal Tree of Life pendant I had made her, or the silver heart, but the Druzy piece was the one I wanted. I knew it was special to her, that it meant something, that it connected us in some way, so it was the one piece that felt like it would bring her close to me. "Is this it?" Tina asked from the closet. I got up and went to look. It was. It had been in one of the bags, and I had somehow missed it. I took it and hugged Tina, clasping it hard in one hand. I wore it to the funeral. Emma wore the pine cone. Ruby wore the gold bee. As we were leaving to go to the funeral, I looked at it and noticed I had put it on her backwards. "Do you know what B stands for?" I asked. "Barbara?" "No, backwards." She paused, then rolled her eyes and walked out to the car. That's it.
Thank you, Beth. And what a really, really emotional and striking essay that was. So I'm going to ask you a few writing questions, and then in a few minutes, I'll bring your co-editor, Chris, in, and we can answer questions about the book that this appears in and what you read has appeared in. So first question, you have an essay in a book that you edited. How did you separate, like, this is me as a writer or this is me as a worker? Was there a separation there?
No, I kind of feel like a collection like that is kind of like a record album. So, as so there was some craft involved in curating the pieces, curating the writers, putting them in order. Chris can tell you more about how much we argued about that. And, last minute changes we both wanted to make and so forth. But I really felt like it was kind of, I guess, incumbent on me as a writer to make a piece that fit in with that collection nicely.
Well, yeah, I mean, if I understand about order and song order as well. So are you saying that there are hits in here and there are B-sides?
No, I am not saying that. What I'm saying is that there is an artistic statement that's bigger than my piece, and it's, and all the pieces are part of that artistic statement.
All right, now you as a writer, now you had mentioned to Chris that this was going to appear in your own book, this essay, and it's a book of essays. When do you think that would be released?
Well, I just sent it to my brother to make sure that I didn't say anything that's going to piss off anybody in the family. After that, it'll go to an honest to God editor, and then hopefully we'll be done with this thing, because there is a draft. It's a full draft right now. So
Now, is there something that you think might piss off someone in there?
Well, so as you can tell, I was having a lot of feelings as I was going through, and I think most people do, in the wake of a family member's death. There are a lot of feelings, and some of them were, not entirely positive. I would say that there's probably not a member of my family that I didn't get pissed off at some point. And I really tried to either own that anger as, like, just kind of my thing, or, take it out altogether. But I want to make sure that I didn't, say anything bad about anybody.
But isn't that, as you as a writer, isn't that your prerogative to go there, to express your feelings? I mean, was there any kind of conflict within that?
Yeah, I really was. One of the people I was really pissed at was the rabbi, and you guys are the only one that are going to hear this story, because I took part of it out of the book, and I used the F word a couple of times in the chapter about his eulogy. So I just felt like, I have to continue living in this community even after my book comes out. So that seemed like unnecessarily harsh.
Yeah, but death, though, is such a common feeling. Like, I think we've all been to funerals and wakes that people just say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing or just not know the person the way they should be known. So did you feel that in this case he didn't do work?
I feel like he specifically didn't hear anything I said to him, and I made that clear. That's clear in the chapter, but like the real bile, like, where I said fuck him. I was like, all right, that doesn't really serve any purpose except upsetting somebody later. So
now, besides essays that you've written, have you ever started any other type of in other types of genre? Have you written poetry or novels or short stories?
So I have written poetry. I have written short stories. I actually did a practice for several years where I wrote a micro short story every single morning for 3, 4, or 5 years. I haven't published any of it. I have been published in newspapers as a newspaper writer. So this is actually my first book.
So writing an essay, do you feel that's closer to journalism versus poetry or short stories, or is writing for you just writing? And I don't mean just writing, you know that.
Yeah, I think, on some level, writing this piece and writing these kinds of pieces where it's, or even a memoir is a lot like reporting on your own life. When I go to someplace and I'm reporting on an event, I'm sharing the experience of being at that event. And, so when I write about my own life, it's basically the same. I feel like I'm reporting. I'm like, yeah.
But with writing, very often you want to have a hook and you want to open your paragraph with that really strong, bold sentence. So it's sort of like using inverted pyramid, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I always say, like a story gets written the minute I have the lead. As soon as I have the lead, then I know what the rest of the story is. I just have to type fast enough to keep up with my own thoughts, because it's all right there in that first sentence, although not so much in this essay actually. But I think that's partly because it's chapter 2 of my book.
Okay, I'm going to ask Chris Joseph to unmute now. And Chris, I've had Chris as my guest in here when his book, Life's a Ride, came out. And what I want people to know is, Beth and Chris edited this book, which became a #1 bestseller. It's a book of essays. And it's 20 personal revelations. And what I want to do is, this was sort of your first.
Uh-oh.
We lost you.
Yeah, I think
It's like we're going to pause for this commercial message.
Hang on, I'll be back.
We missed you.
So, hi. So coming up with a book and working on a book together, what were some of the things that exceeded expectations, and what are some of the things that were unforeseen?
Well, I want Beth to help me answer this, because the truth is Beth did most of the work in shepherding this project, doing a lot of editing, coordinating with the writers, coaching the writers, keeping track of what the status of everyone's essay. So I'm probably going to speak for Beth a little bit right now, but it was just, 20 writers, including the two of us. It was like herding cats. I think it was like herding cats. But it was a pleasurable experience. Yeah, please.
But not Tim.
Not Tim, yeah.
Oh, he's
Tim
on
was
time.
great. Yeah.
I was top cat, I guess. What were some of the strategies you used to get a response? 'Cause I've worked in anthologies before, and there's always certain people, and this is not a negative thing necessarily, that they're busy, life happens. So what were some of the techniques you used to reel people in that needed to be reeled in?
Beth,
I fumbled
go
emails.
for it.
Yeah, I just fumbled with emails until they got tired of me and answered me. It's a really simple strategy. I've worked with a lot of coordinating freelance writers and stuff before, and the thing that I have found that works is either call them, or the thing that works best is not paying them, but in this case that didn't apply. So just really constant communication.
It's sort of like life, right? We all have friends who are either early, on time, or late. And it's the same thing with editing this book with 20 writers.
Yeah.
We had all three.
And sometimes early, on time, or late. Sometimes people end up as a no-show. Did you have to deal with any of that?
Not really. No.
Okay.
Go
ahead. Out of the 20,
people drop out of the project right at the beginning, but basically everybody got their first drafts in, and after that it became, like, rewriting's no fun. Raise your hand if you think rewriting is fun. Oh, look, no hands. Right. So.
Now, which of the stories out of the 20 really made an impact for you reading through the manuscript?
Go ahead.
Yeah. So I have to say that every single one of them, and I've in a different way, because they're all so personal, and I felt like with every single one of them I got to know that writer better. And every single time, I mean, when I work with authors on memoirs, and it's like that process of really getting to know somebody, it's always a revelation. It's always a surprise. I've never worked with a writer who is a boring human being. The stories are all so impactful. Everybody's experience is so and the thing that made a big impact on me wasn't an individual story. It was just how connected I felt to everybody through stories. That said, yours was about, and Chris and Barbara, and who else on?
I sort of looked at it. What's the line from Animal House? All animals are equal, but some are more equal than others. And I think that Barbara, who's on this Zoom call, raise your hand, Barbara, so people know who you are. That was the story that really hit me the most. And Beth and I were in agreement that we wanted our readers to see that story first. So it's the first story in the anthology.
Now, another thing I was thinking too, that you were in a writing group with myself and a lot of the authors that were in here. Whose story stood out as something that you didn't expect? Like, we'd hang out every day on Zoom for writing group. Like, who did you read that you were like, I had no idea that this was their life, or this had happened, or this is how they were, or who they were?
Well, that's a great question.
I actually found Heather's story surprising because, first of all, I never met anybody else who opened an animal sanctuary. And that one was kind of surprising, and it was just like it was a kind of dramatic departure from some of the other stories in terms of the content, in terms of what her experience was. So that one for sure.
I'm really attracted to authenticity.
Yeah.
And every one of the writers really exposed themselves. So that sounded weird. Expose their emotions. Yes, exactly. Thank you, Tim, for helping me on that one. So I don't know that any one of them surprised me, but I was just so appreciative that everyone was willing to really put themselves out there.
Yeah, and I know that the Zoom does cutaways in the final edits, so I'm just saying that I didn't actually expose myself during that part, just in case you wondered. That would be really kind of awful. So putting together the book had some really success. So why do you think a book like this is so successful?
I mean, reading the reviews, which I think that two things. One, that really deep personal thing, and people related to it, and they were. I think that they were that people were like, I don't want to say impressed. Impressed is the wrong word, but it made an impression on them that 20 different writers were willing to expose themselves so personally to share their stories. And the other thing was, I think that it's like a box of chocolates. You eat one quickly. They're like these little short stories. You're done with it, and then you can go do something else, and it's great bathroom reading or whatever. It's just the kind of the variety of it. I think people really liked a lot.
And how did you guys decide to order the pieces? I'm jumping into the chat, and John Westick had a question about how you decided to order them. Was there some sort of narrative curve that you wanted to do within the book?
Chris, you want to talk about that? You want me to talk about it?
Sure, I'll jump in, and then you can help me. Beth took the lead on ordering the essays, and we both agreed, and we didn't really disagree. I mean, she sent it to me, and I looked at it, and I think I may have tweaked one or two. I think Beth really got it right, and I was really happy that we were both in agreement that Barbara's story should be first.
My first pass was, and I don't know if this is a right or a wrong, but my kind of goal was creating some contrast. Like if something was really heavy, I wanted to, maybe go to something funny next. I didn't want to put two stories that were a lot alike next to each other. We have a handful of recovery stories. We have a handful of grief stories. I tried to kind of keep them away from each other so that what was next was not more of what you just read, but something totally different. That was really my foundational thought, ordering the stories.
All right, now this is a question I think it was meant for Beth and her essay, but Chris too, because in the book as well. How do you feel? Do you feel there's a tension between or a conflict between telling? Do you think the truth or telling a good story?
Can you say that question again? Because you cut out on my end here.
Do you feel that? Yeah, do you feel that for the writer between telling the truth or telling a good story?
I think if you tell the truth the right way, it's almost always a good story. Back to my point about no human being not being interesting. So if you dig deep and you find the stuff that is both really unique about you as a writer and also the things that people are going to relate to, like I don't think anybody did relate to some of the stuff that I said in my story. It's pretty generic in terms of mother-daughter relationships. So I think that if I think it's about just keeping it interesting. I mean, telling it in a way that's interesting. Bringing somebody, I'm coaching a student and I said to him, I said, do you want to hear about something that happened to somebody after an adventure, or do you want to go on the adventure with them? So if you take somebody on the adventure with you, then I don't think there's any conflict there.
Now, how wanted to do a book?
Say that again?
How did you guys decide to do this project? How did that come about?
That's all Chris. Chris decided to do it.
So I wrote my memoir, Life is a Ride, last year during the pandemic. It was published in August. And I wrote it so quickly. I mean, it is a story about surviving pancreatic cancer. I'm a 5-year survivor. And I knew I had a good story because it's so rare to be where I am right now. But I wrote it so fast that I forgot a couple things. And I realized there was an epiphany I had about love. And I started writing it. And I realized, well, this is a good story, but I can't make this into another book. And so I approached Beth with the idea of, well, if I have an epiphany to write about, other people may have too. And Beth, her eyes lit up, and away we went from there.
Okay. The final question I would like to ask you guys is, how did you choose the writers that are in the book?
Beth,
How were they picked? Or
well, in this particular case, since we were a part of this group, I think that both Chris and I felt strongly that we wanted to work with people that we already knew and had this level of trust and communication with. And I think that was served the book well on, I think that people felt like they were part of something. We were just talking about that today because we'd like to do another collection. That kind of, that built-in sense of camaraderie from being in the writers group together, I think you can feel it in the book somehow. I don't know how exactly, but I think it's there.
and how did both of you guys feel when the really selling and like jumping up in the charts and appearing on various lists in Amazon? How did that feel?
So good.
Yeah. Very exciting.
Go ahead.
I think even more so than where it is on any particular chart were the reviews, really heartfelt reviews that meant a lot to all the writers. It's really nice to see the writing validated.
And also the concept. I mean, just that it landed, that it did what we intended for it to do.
Yeah, well, it's very successful, and congratulations on all your hard work, and it pays off. And here's the book, The Epiphanies Project, and I can also show it to you on the screen share. And we've been talking to Beth Robinson and Chris Joseph, who edited the book, and we also got to hear the essay that's awesome. The essay that Beth has included in the book, and here's what it looks like. And you can find it on Amazon, but you can also go to your local bookstore and ask for it, and they can order it for you. So
And Tim, did you mention you're in the book as well?
but this isn't about me. But I do have an essay. If people, yeah, if people are interested in that, yeah, I know that some people do buy my stuff and are interested in my writing, so I'm also included in that book. So thanks for bringing that in there, Barbara. So thanks, guys.
Thank you.